So, prior to becoming a therapist, I was pretty much a professional nerd. I dressed up in costumes. I've been a member of the 501st. I've collected Star Wars action figures, played Dungeons and Dragons, and just generally immersed myself in pop culture. And one of the reasons I can look back on now and say that I did that is because I found ways of understanding myself in the popular culture that I consumed. After becoming a therapist actually after going to therapy and becoming a therapist, I came to understand how some of the thought patterns that are very prevalent in pop culture stories either helped me or hindered me in my personal growth and development. In this series of videos, what I'd like to do is help you understand and be able to identify unhealthy ways of thinking that are limiting you, holding you back, or generally generating some negative emotions in you. And to do that, I'm going to try and use some of that pop culture stuff that I love to help illustrate these ideas. So if we think back to what cognitive behavioral theory is, it's a theory that says something happens, we have a thought about what that something means, and then the outcome of that thought is either an emotion or a behavior or both. So a pretty simple example of that would be if my daughter came into my office and voluntarily just gave me a big hug. That's something happening. I would have a thought about what that means. Oh, she must really love me. Or, wow, I must be doing okay as a dad for her to voluntarily want to come in and hug me. It must mean that she really cares about me. And of course, the resulting emotion would be feeling loved, and the resulting behavior would likely be giving her a hug back. But just like we engage in habits of behavior, I get up in the morning, I take a shower, I brush my teeth, and I do all of those things really without thinking about it too much. In the same way, each of us have individual thought styles, or one might refer to them as thought habits, that also take place mostly outside of our awareness. We don't really think about what we're thinking about. We've thought in those ways so much during our lives that we end up just doing it automatically. And those automatic patterns of thought produce emotions and behaviors. Way back in the 70s, cognitive behavioral theorists began to categorize and study these common thought habits that produced common emotional outputs. And what they came to understand is certain common thought styles were the culprits for producing anxiety and depression and all manner of other mood disorders. They labeled these thought patterns, these common styles of thinking, cognitive distortions. And much if you went to a amusement park where they had those funhouse mirrors, if you stand in front of one, it makes you look really tall. And if you stand in front of another, it makes you look really wide. And if you stand in front of yet another, your face looks extremely distorted in this funhouse mirror. That's how you can think of cognitive distortions. They are ways of taking input and distorting them that produce an output that doesn't really match reality. And the more distorted our thought patterns are, the more likely they are to produce things like anxiety and depression. So without further ado, let's talk about our very first cognitive distortion in this series of videos that will cover all of the cognitive distortions. This one is called all or nothing thinking, also sometimes referred to as black and white thinking. And to familiarize us with this idea, let's turn to our good friend, yours and mine, Anakin Skywalker.
I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Your new empire?
Don't make me kill you.
Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy!
If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I will do what I must.
You will try.
So you can see here, Anakin is deeply embedded in that dichotomous way of thinking. It's either you're with me or you're against me. Either you're my friend or you're my enemy. You're either all or nothing. In this next example, we're going to jump over to the Harry Potter universe, where Harry is introduced for the first time to the idea of what a mudblood is. And I absolutely love this scene for a couple reasons. One, it's very obvious where the black and white thinking lies and how problematic it is. But the other thing I love about it is that Hagrid in this scene introduces a core CBT concept that we'll come to later, which is disputing your negative thoughts, finding evidence for them, and arguing against them when there isn't any.
See, the thing is, Harry, there's some wizards, like the Malfoy family, who think they're better than everyone else because they're what people call pure blood.
That's horrible. It's disgusting.
And it's codswallop to blood. Dirty blood. Why, there isn't a wizard alive today that's not half blood or less. More to the point, they've yet to think of a spell that our Hermione can't do. Come here. Don't you think on it, Hermione. Don't you think on it for 1 minute.
Don't you just wish you could have a Hagrid walking around with you in your brain that told you in such reassuring tones, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it for 1 minute. The thing I love about this scene is that it really drives home the fact that pain stems from thoughts. And Hagrid does a great job. First of all, the black and white nature of the thinking is mudbloods versus pure blood wizards, right? So pure blood wizards are pure and perfect and wonderful, and mudbloods are some denigration of that purity. That is very black and white. Here, Hagrid disputes this quite well. He simply says, there isn't anybody alive that isn't some part mudblood. So this is a silly distinction that has nothing to do with reality. And then he acknowledges to Hermione that it's the thought that's causing her pain by saying, don't think about it. It's not true. And he does such a fantastic job of pointing out that it's thought creating pain and that you can dispute that thought with rational thinking to bring down its pain, that it's just a great scene. All right, so we've established what cognitive distortion is. It's a habit of thought that takes an input, something that happens in the real world, and distorts it like a funhouse mirror, making it bigger or smaller or changed or warped in such a way that it produces a negative emotional outcome. And the particular distortion that we're talking about here is all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking. Now, what does this typically produce? Well, this rigidity of thought is typically associated with a lot of anxiety. Either I'm going to get it all right or I'm going to fail. Or depression. I'm either all good or all bad, and since I'm all bad, I can't do anything about it, and I'm depressed. These are kind of the common outcomes of all or nothing thinking. So what is it that you can do to help pull yourself out of this all or nothing thinking pattern? Well, the very first thing that I think anyone attempting to confront these distortions should do is just simply begin to become aware of them. And here the question becomes how? How do I become aware of these things? Well, the first thing I would advise against is just trying to pay attention to them in your mind. We are so conditioned and so automatic in our thought process that many times it's hard to identify and step back with just your mind and identify what you're thinking about. The very best thing I think one could do is just simply identify in your day periods when you felt particularly angry or particularly sad or particularly anxious, and go back to those moments throughout the day, maybe at the end of the day, with a piece of paper and a pen, and write down, what was I thinking about when I was feeling that way? And as you begin to write down what you've been thinking about when you have these moments of high or low emotions throughout the day, you'll start to see whether or not the types of thoughts that you are having are all or nothing thoughts. So that's it for all or nothing thinking from me. However, I'm going to leave you with one last clip. probably one of the most beautiful moments in movie history for me personally, and one that has meant the most to me. Luke Skywalker is being trained by Yoda on Dagobah. And during his training, his X-Wing fighter is trapped underneath the swampy waters of Dagobah. Yoda advises Luke on how to lift his X-Wing out of the water. And failing, Luke says to Yoda, "You want the impossible." This is all or nothing dichotomous thinking. And Yoda displays to Luke why that thinking is wrong. And I want you to pay special attention, if you choose to stick around, to the last thing that Yoda says.
I don't believe it. That is why you fail.